A good job I have my chief executive here with me to switch the things on. But and welcome and Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you. You passed that to me.
Yeah. Unless you want me to wave it about.
Well, you can put it up. Could put it there for us. That would be evening. Have I taken yours as well? Oh, that's right. Okay. Right. Well, good evening, everybody. I hope you were all there to hear the carols. And I'll just say a warm welcome to Rushcliffe Borough Council's council meeting. And just mention a few things that I've been up to over the last, no, I've got to read that first. Okay. Right. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the local authorities' executive arrangements, meetings and access to information, England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from the meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the council's control. Any council or councillor who wishes to speak should raise their hand and your request will be noted. You will be asked to speak in turn by me, and then you may turn on your microphone. Once you have finished speaking, would you please turn off your microphone? In respect of voting, when asked by me, councillors should raise their hand to indicate how they wish to vote. If a roll call is requested, councillors' names will be called out as previously referred to. A councillor may raise a point of order or make a personal explanation at any time by raising their hand. Will be final. During a debate, if I stand up, any councillor speaking at the time must stop and sit down. Everyone in the room must be silent. We will be having a short 5-minute break at around 8:30 between agenda items. This is subject to progress that has been made through the agenda. Thank you. And now we go to moments of reflection by Reverend Bronwen Gamble, to lead us in a moment of reflection, please. Would you like to take a seat, please, Bronwen? Oh, well, just do the best you can. I'm sorry about that. I think I've got a cold coming too.
Thank you. It was lovely to hear those young people singing this evening. And I'm sure that brings back memories for us all about what we did at Christmas time at school. I was reminiscing with a friend recently, and the only thing I can remember was about dressing up as an angel. Some people would say that might not be appropriate. But it is a time when families get together. And this time of Advent is a time of preparing. In the church calendar, it's a time when we think about our future, but not just our future as individuals, but our future as Christians, for those who are practicing Christians, and the time when God will return to us again. We give thanks, I think, for all that we see that is good in all our faith groups, and the local authority is one of those other institutions to which we look for guidance. So my prayer today would be that as we get together, prepare for Christmas, and hopefully not being in the rush that the children were singing about, but taking the opportunity just to stand back a little and remember who we are and why we are here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bronwyn, for that. You can take a seat and listen to as much of the meeting as you wish.
I think I'll give that a miss.
And Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
And Merry Christmas to you.
And to you.
Thank you. Right, we move on now. Apologies for absence, Gemma.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no apologies for absence tonight.
Thank you. Declarations of interest? Any declarations of interest? No? Okay. We move to item 3, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the council held on 21st of September 2023. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and a much pleasure in moving those minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second the minutes.
Okay. All in favour? Anyone against? Okay. And abstentions? No. Okay. I declare that the vote's carried. Thank you. Right. Now we come to the Mayor's announcements. Well, I've had a fairly busy time, as you can imagine. I've started singing all the hymns and carols at the various Christmas carol services that I've been to, and I've been to a few. But earlier on, I went to Goose Fair, and that was an interesting experience, I found. I was a bit worried about it, but because we were ringing the bells right next to the big wheel, and I get dizzy on a kitchen stool. And as it finished, I sort of left and followed the others and walked round the corner, and I was in the queue to go on the big wheel. And I felt, I can't back out now, can I, really? So I kept going. I didn't see a lot as I had my eyes closed because I'm not very good. Never mind doing a viaduct and a thing that was done by previous mayors. But if anybody knows, and this is a serious question, anybody, I have asked people at Tollerton Airport, I love aeroplanes, and I would love to do a loop-the-loop. Now, having said that, I didn't like going on the wheel, but I like an aeroplane. It's got an engine and a pilot, and hopefully it will go up and round. But if anybody knows of anybody that would take the mare up and turn her upside down and hopefully bring her back the right way up,
With pleasure, Madam Mayor.
I would appreciate it. I would do it for my charity, and I'm sure you would pay to see me do that, and come back here as well. So hopefully that would be, I thought, quite good. But of all the things and other things that I did, which was most interesting was last Sunday, and I went to Kirby in Ashfield, and I was supposed to sort of process with the other people with the chains on and with various deputy lieutenants and things. And when I got there, everybody was so pleased to see me. And I thought, well, that's really nice. And it was about, the snow was about this thick. We'd come up the M1 in fog, snow, ice, and everything else. And I got in there and I said, I processed, do I, as usual? And they said, oh, yes, yeah. And I said, who's in the procession? He said, you are. You are the procession. You're the only one that's turned up. So it was an illuminating experience. And Dale, who is the mayor of Ashfield, unfortunately, his wife is having a baby and she wasn't very well, and it was a bit serious, I think, and she was in hospital. So he didn't turn up, but the rest just didn't make it through the snow and rain. So I like to think I'm fairly intrepid in that way. Also, the other things that I've been doing, which I've just made a note of, and which the Chief Exec has got here. Oh yes, Goose Fair, Christmas carols. But one of the big things that I've done is, as you know, it's the awards ceremony here the other evening, the other Thursday night. And all the people in Rushcliffe. It was a fantastic evening. I've been before quite a few times, but I think this year there were so many. Was it 150, Leader? Applications. 350. 350 people had their names put forward for awards for sport, environment, business. I thought that it was the most that has ever been received. So I was really thrilled with that. And the only snag was I had to go up and down those steps. And they were quite steep, like this, with my little legs. Nothing to hang on to. And I had to go up every time an award was given. But I did make it and I didn't fall down. So I was quite pleased about that. My charity is coming along. And one of the main things is just recently is some Christmas wreaths are for sale. And it's Jane's, Councillor Andy Edivine's wife. She is making wreaths for Christmas. And £15 for every wreath that is bought, they will donate £15 to the Mayor's charity. And I've ordered 3. Andy's, well, this is Andy's that I've got here. They are foraged for. Everything that's on there has been foraged in the woods, I've been told. Councillor Edivine, yeah? Is that right?
Madam Mayor, except for the little bits that are tied on.
Oh, right. Okay. Except for the little bits that are tied on. So I would ask you all to, if you wish, to come and have a look and put your order in, either to myself or to Councillor Edivine, because I was very moved. He's already sold quite a lot, and it's £200 for my charity, and I would like a few more if you wish. So really, it then sort of, lots of other things happened, but you'll be pleased to know I won't be going through them. But I thought it was lovely, the children out there. They're obviously very proud of their school as well. And when I took them in there for their chocolate Santa and a little badge with a mayor on, they were absolutely thrilled. And every single one thanked me. And I thought it was very, very nice. And I was very pleased that that they were able to come, and I will visit them over the next few days. So thank you very much for that. And I suppose it could be quite a, whether it's going to be a long meeting or not, we will see. But I think we will now move on to the next item. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. We now go on to the leader's announcement.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. And I've just got a couple of things to talk about. In actual fact, you've already mentioned one of them, the Rushcliffe Awards. So I just want to a certain extent, echo your comments. It really was a fantastic event, and it really showcased all the superb volunteers that are in our communities around Rushcliffe, and how much residents and people and groups and organisations put into making the communities in Rushcliffe so successful. There were 9 or 10 categories of varying sorts, and the standard of volunteering of the applicants, the nominations, was absolutely amazing. And I do want to congratulate all the staff. I won't name any particular names because I'll go and forget some, but the whole team, they organised it superbly, and it really did showcase how well Rushcliffe can put on a great event for the benefit of the residents. And I think we all agreed, and I think we all repeated several times that everybody in the room were winners, even though some people are actually won the category. The other thing I just want to mention, I don't know whether people are aware, but Sir John Peace, the Lord Lieutenant of Nottinghamshire, he is retiring next March. So there will be a new Lord Lieutenant being appointed next March. And I have sent a congratulating tribute to Sir John Peace on behalf of the council, congratulating him on his very successful tenure as Lord Lieutenant of Nottinghamshire. And obviously, as you're all aware, the representative of the monarch in Nottinghamshire, obviously representing the late Queen and then the present King Charles. So he's done a very good job to work on behalf of the people of Nottinghamshire. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Item 6, there are no announcements. So we go on to item 7, which is the citizens' questions. A citizen's questions has been received from Mr. Simon Young. So if you would like to take a seat there and thank you, and start when you're ready.
Thank you very much for the invitation. My question is, why are solar panels and roof orientation not a mandatory condition of planning approval? We are building many thousands of new homes and large acreages of warehousing, and it is much more sustainable and economic to fit them from new. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Upton, would you respond, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And firstly, thank you, Mr. Young, for coming to give your question in person on such a bad evening, frankly. That's much appreciated by, I think, all of us here. I think I speak for most of the officers of the Borough Council, and certainly I think for most people in this room, from the councillors, and certainly from myself, when I say we basically agree with the sentiments that you've expressed in your question. I'd be surprised if any of us didn't agree with the thinking behind the question. Our current local development plan was started in 2014 and then was enhanced in 2017-19 or whatever. So it's getting out of date. But it does have in there some policies that try to encourage, I stress the word encourage, developers, be they develop in commercial, retail or residential, to try and put into their developments solar panels, green technology, the whole range of sustainability, trying to reduce carbon reduction. And I think we're all minded the world has moved on, not necessarily for the better, in the sense that climate change and carbon reduction have become far more rightly focused in our minds than it was when we wrote our local plan back in 2014. So what I'm coming around to there is to try and say, yes, we try and encourage developers with some success, but perhaps not a lot in reflection. The problem we have is our toolbox and how we can enforce that desire and encouragement is frankly quite limited, because national planning policies are not there in the sense that we can't put a condition on a planning application to say, and you will provide solar panels and you will orientate your buildings a certain way to the best advantage. And without that power, if you like, we are very reluctant, I would suggest, to put those conditions on, because if a developer then goes to appeal to the Government Secretary of State and case law would suggest to us we will not win on that, then we will lose. Therefore, why would you go around that circle and end up with a financial hit? However, that's sort of where we are, and looking back, I like to think we're looking forward in this Borough Council. And we have been on a journey for some months now, and hopefully it will conclude in just about a year's time, to rewrite our local development plan. That's quite an onerous task, and we do it in conjunction with other local authorities, Gedlin, City of Nottingham, Broxtowe. And so it's quite a big thing. But it will again come to the government inspector, probably in this room, to look at it carefully and go through it. And then eventually the full council, such as this, will adopt it, probably early, I hope, in 2025. So it's a little way down the track. But we want to put in there a lot more, not so much encouragement, but policies that relate to your question. And I'm reasonably optimistic we will do that, and it will test the investigation of the inspector, and we will adopt it. Parallel to that, we've just literally in the last month started a revision of our 2009 design code for buildings. That's old, and we are determined to rewrite it and bring it up to date. So there's another opportunity there in the new design code for buildings where we can put in all the things that you talk about and I've just mentioned. So there's a number of things we're working at. Work is in progress, if you like. I hope that gives you some encouragement that we understand where your question's coming from. We're on the case. It might take a year to get to that final end of the journey, but we agree, and I think I speak for pretty much everybody, we agree with the sentiments that you express. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We now have another citizen's question, and it has been received from Mr. Lee Holden, who is unable to attend the meeting. So I will read out the question. Councillor Inglis is going to reply. A few streets in our town centres, the borough is looking very scruffy. Why is it acceptable to reduce basic low-cost routine cleaning and maintenance, such as thorough weed clearance and road sweeping activities? And does the council believe that an intelligence-led reactive cleaning and maintenance regime is working? And more importantly, offering long-term value for money? Councillor Inglis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Holden for raising this question. I also understand he has raised similar concerns with various officers at Rushcliffe over the course of the last few months, and I trust those queries have been answered favourably for him. I can confirm that mechanical sweeping schedules have not been reduced, and that we've carried out additional remedial work in the Rushcliffe Road area following Mr. Holden's raising his concerns. Some of his concerns raised, such as weed spraying, fall under the remit of the County Council as a designated highways authority. I'd also like to thank Mr. Holden for his kind comments addressed to Streetwise for the cleaning work we have carried out, but acknowledge and confirm that we will continue to monitor cleansing levels and continue to take a targeted approach to cleansing areas of high footfall and known hotspot areas. We do have limited resources to address cleaning issues, not just in this specific area, but across the whole borough. And this cleaning includes all areas of the service, which includes not just mechanical sweeping, but litter picking, the emptying of litter bins and dog bins, graffiti removal, chewing gum eradication, the removal of fly posting and fly tipping, and general street cleansing. Let's not forget the council are active to the cause, which is people dropping or not disposing of litter responsibly. We carry out monthly checks of the works carried out and an assessment of the general overall cleanliness of the borough, which shows that the areas we inspect are clean. Assessments show that the overall cleanliness is at 97.8%, which meets our statutory requirements under the Environmental Protection Act, and in our opinion represents good value for money. Furthermore, the insourcing of the council streetwise service has allowed greater flexibility and continue to target our resources across the whole borough, as well as services enhancements, such as the recent main junction and Splitter Island cleansing programme, additional work carried out on some trunk roads that run through the borough, and our annual leaf sweeping programme, which is currently underway. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, petitions. There are no petitions have been received. So we go to item 9 now, which is the East Midland devolution deal. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor, and a pleasure in moving this, the recommendations on this item, which is an extremely important item. Maybe you might say, well, it's more important for the upper tier authorities, those of Nottinghamshire County Council, Nottingham City Council, Derbyshire County Council and Derby City Council, but districts and boroughs are also party to the debate and also have some input into the process. And I think in looking at and assessing, approving this item, we need to look obviously at the benefits to district councils. And there are significant benefits because this particular devolution deal will bring significant additional investment to the region as a whole. And what is important is that a mayoral combined authority will then give a single voice to the region. So if you think of other areas such as West Midlands, Manchester, that have a single voice, and therefore it's easier to focus on one particular person and organisation. And so this is the intention, is to be able to have that single focus for districts and boroughs, because there are 19 districts and boroughs around Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, as well as the 4 upper tier councils. And on the, who knows if the mayor is going to call it a cabinet, but let's assume the mayor calls it a cabinet. On there will be 2 members representing district councils in Nottinghamshire and Nottinghamshire, and 2 members representing districts in Derbyshire. So it is important, therefore, that we will have that input and be able to voice our opinions into the combined authority. And the whole point of this is it's bringing extra investment into the region as a whole. So it will be bringing in, getting on for £4 billion of investment. So that will cover things such as transport, it will cover skills and employment, it will cover some aspects of housing, and it will make sure that we can then all work together. And one of the advantages of this process is it's the first time, I think, that all the districts and boroughs and upper tier authorities have actually all come together and discussing within one room, around one table, how we can progress. So it is important. I'm thankful for districts and borough councils officers have invested considerable time in bringing this to where we are now. The 4 upper tier authorities have now approved this. The county council approved it earlier on today, as did the other 3 authorities. And therefore it's important. And some people might say, well, why do Rushcliffe need to be involved? Well, the important thing is that we need to be there at the table, because if you are not at the table and involved with it, then you're certainly not going to get any benefits out of it. So it's incumbent on all district and borough councils to make sure that we do have that input into the whole process. One of the big things, as an example, one of the big benefits in terms of transport, that will allow the mayor of the combined authority to integrate transport across the 2 counties, rather than having 4 separate authorities organising, for instance, bus services, tram, etc. We'll be able to integrate those, and the mayor will be able to have a bus network covering all 4 counties. Therefore, that brings with it efficiencies and better value for money for the residents. So that's just an example of where there will be real tangible benefits for residents that they will be able to see and benefit from. So I'm very happy, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendations, and I hope that everybody in the chamber will support it. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan, do you wish to second?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to second the recommendation, and I'll reserve the right to speak, please.
Councillor Grocott, you're speaking for the Labour Group.
I am, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Firstly, let me say that the Labour Group absolutely supports this recommendation and the ongoing involvement and engagement of Rushcliffe Borough Council in the development of the East Midlands Mayoral Combined Authority, County Authority, I should say, and in the delivery of the benefits that will come to the region through devolution. Devolution in the United Kingdom has been a complex and inconsistent process. The Celtic nations have parliaments and assemblies with extensive powers. Greater London has a directly elected mayor, but also an elected assembly. The great city regions of Northern England, the West Midlands, and the West Country have directly elected mayors across multiple unitary authorities. We in the East Midlands are a pilot for this new concept of a county combined authority. And then we see in other parts of England a lower level devolution deal, which don't create any kind of real regional government, and a little more than the transfer of some powers, meagre powers and budgets from central government to local authorities in other parts of England. This patchwork of piecemeal devolution arrangements is the result of the lukewarm commitment of successive governments to delivering a systematic and consistent new constitutional settlement that would genuinely counter nationalist secessionism whilst giving England true regional democracy and associated powers, budgets and responsibilities. No advanced Western economy has the regional disparities in socio-economic opportunity, advantage and outcomes that we see in the United Kingdom, especially within England itself. As well as 13 years of economic mismanagement, admittedly, in the face of turbulent economic conditions globally, this situation is in no small part down to a failure to genuinely devolve and create a truly decentralised democratic political structure that this country and indeed our region so badly needs. Nevertheless, we are where we are. The perfect or ideal should never be the enemy of the good, or at least the only thing on the table. And there are many positives to take from this devolution deal in terms of the powers and budgets around skills, housing, transport and regeneration that it transfers to a regionally elected mayor and their cabinet of local authority leaders. But the key question is how Rushcliffe makes the most of this deal and indeed plays its part as a key locality and stakeholder in the newly defined East Midlands region and its mayoral county combined authority. We have noted the district and borough representatives to the executive leaders group, and whilst it's evident that Rushcliffe's leader hasn't been selected as one of those representatives, this is perhaps not surprising, given that Rushcliffe is now the only lower tier authority across the EMCCA area that still has a Conservative administration. Furthermore, whilst none of us are political soothsayers, you don't have to be Sir John Curtis to acknowledge the likelihood that the Labour Party will win the next general election. The Labour candidate Claire Ward will be elected as the first mayor of the East Midlands, and that after the county council elections in May 2025, Rushcliffe may well be the only tier of government in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire that still has a Conservative administration. What a lonely time that might seem for the members opposite. So our only ask of them is simple. Work with us. Put your best One Nation hats on and let us collaborate to find common ground where we can on non-partisan issues and deliver for the people of Rushcliffe. If you can avoid opposing for the sake of political point scoring the reasonable proposals and motions made by our political group, then there is a greater chance that you, as Rushcliffe's majority party and governing administration, will be seen by the EMCCA and its other component councils as a good partner, willing to work pragmatically across political lines to deliver the best for the residents of our borough and the region at large. In particular, rather than congratulating themselves for Rushcliffe's prosperity, which is in many ways the fortunate result of the economic geography around which our political boundary is drawn, recognise the role that Rushcliffe can play regionally as a locus for inward investment, job creation, training opportunities, new housing, community facilities, and infrastructure. Within this new regional political structure, we can use these natural advantages to not only deliver for our residents, but play a bigger role in helping neighbouring areas which do not have these qualities and fortunes to address the deep socio-economic challenges and inequalities they suffer. Do these things, adopt this outlook, and you genuinely will be able to make the best case for investment in Rushcliffe and ensure the voice of Rushcliffe is heard within the East Midlands Mayoral Combined Authority. Thank you. No clap this time. Thought we agreed that in the choreography.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. Very well timed. Councillor Richard Malinder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have such a loving. I was thinking maybe you should get you a room or something at this point. Thank you. It's really interesting in the true spirit of Christmas.
Yes,
it is very, very interesting to see this form of devolution come forward. I've been working over the last several months with a number of combined authorities: West of England, West Midlands, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, South Yorkshire. It's interesting to see the different models that they have, the way they work, the way that they can bring together people of very, very disparate opinions. They also have authorities that are differing in political outlook, shall we say. But generally speaking, they do seem to work tolerably well. I do think it's about time that we had devolution for, I won't call it the East Midlands, it's a horrible thing, EMMCCA. You can't even sing along YMCA to it properly, can you? But please come up with a better name. But I think it is time, well past time, that we had some devolution back in the East Midlands, even if it's only for 2 of the counties and the cities together. I think Lincolnshire are going to get some similar deal further down the line. I'm minded, particularly on the transport side, that it was not many years ago when the total amount of funding allocated for transport for the whole of the East Midlands was less than the annual uplift for transport for London, which just shows how far behind we are in comparison with many other parts of the UK. I do wish that we had a better system of devolution in this country. It is not like, although there are many, many sort of different types around the world, it is notable that in this country we have devolution of responsibility and then a central government grant, where we're beholden to central government for that funding. There is no element, no significant element of raising of money locally. No taxation without representation. You know, it is about time that local authorities, such as the combined authorities, were able to raise the money locally to spend it locally, not be beholden on central government. It's a flawed model, but having said that, it's the only one on offer. Therefore, I support our continued involvement in this. I hope it can come up with a better hand of Scrabble than EMMCCA for a name. But we do need to keep Rushcliffe involved. We do need to make sure that we get the best deal for our residents and for the whole of the Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire area combined. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak before I go to Councillor Brennan? Oh, Councillor Way. Sorry, didn't see you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the other council members have already said, there are a lot of positives about this move. However, there continue to be a lot of concerns and questions about the process. It's still worrying that this additional tier will be costly. There is a possibility of the elected mayor being able to raise a precept, adding a 4th layer to our rates bills and adding the financial stresses of residents and businesses. The interim ruling group has been voted on, as Councillor Grocott has said, and consists of 4 Labour leaders from districts and borough councils. Will there be a more proportional representation in future? I understand from Councillor Grocott that there won't be a need for proportional representation, but we hope. Will the members elected remain in post for the whole term, or will there be a rotation to address proportionality and differing viewpoints? Concerns are that some districts will miss out on funding due to party political bias. How much impact will the failings of some councils to balance budgets have on those who have managed their finances more successfully? Could the latter miss out on other funding, becoming a victim of their good management? It's hoped that ambitious plans to find solutions to adult education, a topic that's very close to my heart, and transport that crosses boundaries, will be inclusive of the whole region, including the more rural areas, which are often sidelined for such services. Despite, or maybe because of, these concerns, it's important that RBC retains its place at the table to ensure that Rushcliffe's needs are heard. So we will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else to speak, I turn to Councillor Brennan, please, who has reserved the right to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do welcome this report and I strongly support the move to a combined authority and welcome the additional investment that will bring to the region. We really need to up our game in this part of the world. As we've discussed before, we miss out continually on large-scale investment because we failed to get our act together in the past. So I have every optimism about the future of this. I also welcome Councillor Grocot's optimism about it all, although rather hope is going to be disappointed in due course. Regional authorities are closer to their residents and have an understanding of the local economy, local infrastructure, local needs and opportunities that Westminster rarely has. And this idea of a single voice speaking for the region is something we absolutely should welcome, and the new resources and extra investment that should bring with it. It is clear, though, that this is not without risk to the Borough Council, which I think Councillor Way was alluding to. It would not be unreasonable to think the focus of the combined authority might be on areas other than Rushcliffe. Despite our perceived affluence, there are still needs and demands in the Rushcliffe Borough that we need to make sure are recognised. We don't want those priorities to be subsumed into a wider authority. We do not yet fully understand the implications for us of this, but we shouldn't be naive about the trajectory for the organisation of local government that this might indicate. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it would be not in our interest to recognise that that might be the direction of travel. As Councillor Way said, it's going to be a challenging time for the new authority to operate effectively, not least as one of the major players has very significant financial challenges at the moment. And it would be very easy for the needs and ambitions of Rushcliffe to be overwhelmed in this scenario. It's vital, therefore, that we continue to stay close to this, that we do have a seat at the table where we can, and we position ourselves to advocate clearly for the residents of Rushcliffe, because that is our job. We need to be fully engaged and close to it as it moves forward. Should the needs and priorities of the combined authority and upper tier authorities diverge from the needs, priorities and ambitions of this borough, we need to have a clear and unambiguous voice advocating for us, as well as working with and through the elected borough and district representatives on the proposed cabinet. I welcome the proposals, as I think Councillor Grocott mentioned, of a wider district and borough assembly of some kind that will also give voice directly to the second tier authorities. There's still a lot of work to be done, and we need to try to influence it to ensure that our needs and priorities are not lost in the ensuing melee. But as I said at the outset, this is a great opportunity to devolve funds and decision making to Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire level, away from Westminster and closer to the residents of those counties and cities and this borough. As has been said, we've already benefited, for example, from £580,000 of funds for environmental retrofitting for housing in Rushcliffe. So we need to make sure that those priorities are reflected and that the funding continues to come here where it's needed. So I'm very happy to second the recommendation at paragraph 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn to Councillor Clark, the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Just a few brief comments. And I thank Councillor Grocott for his very interesting analysis of the situation. And I'll just refer to his point about the leaders. And just for everybody's benefit, as I said, all 4 representatives of districts on the combined authority have been voted in by the district councils, all 4 of them being Labour, and all their substitute representatives being Labour. So good luck with your proposal for proportional representation, Councillor Grocott. Perhaps you might like to use your good offices to persuade them that perhaps they should have at least one person representing Conservatives on the combined authority. Anyway, I'll leave you to work hard on our behalf. So, Councillor Mallender, yes, the better name. Well, unfortunately, that's way above my pay grade as leader of Rushcliffe. So I will have very little influence. You're right, Lincolnshire are negotiating a separate deal. There's a chance, but it's a long way down the road yet, whether we can persuade Leicestershire to come on board into Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire. That would be great if they would. But shall we just say that's considerable work in progress at the moment. And there's quite a long way to go on that one. But yeah, you said far behind, and Councillor Brennan mentioned it as well. It's important that this hopefully will allow that more focused deal and focus on the East Midlands as a whole, rather than all disparate, separate councils trying to work independently. And that's why I hope this will attract a lot more investment into the region. And Councillor Way, quite rightly, and I agree with comments about transport, it will allow better integration for transport services across the county. In terms of the precept, well, I suppose I could, with a bit of tongue-in-cheek, say, well, if you support the Conservative candidate, it's highly likely there wouldn't be a precept. So I'll leave that one with you as well. Anyway, I'm pleased to hear, Madam Mayor, that there seems to be general consensus and general agreement. So it would be great if it could be a unanimous vote in favour. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Well, I think we will now go to the vote. Okay. All those in favour? Don't think okay. Anyone against? No. Abstentions? One. Okay. Okay. Yep. So I declare that vote carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we go to the next item, item 10, on the corporate strategy. Councillor Clark, to move. Thank you.
Yep, thank you again, Madam Mayor. And I've much pleasure, and it's an honour to move the adoption of this corporate strategy for the ensuing next 4 years, which builds on the previous 4 years, which just shows how successful this council is in making Rushcliffe such a thriving community, and as the strapline says, a great lifestyle for those living in Rushcliffe. And if things are going well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The council priorities from the previous 4 years were the environment, the quality of life, sustainable growth and efficient services. And it is, as you can see from the documentation, it's intended we continue with those priorities because they are still very relevant and still very apt for us to continue making sure that Rushcliffe residents enjoy that great lifestyle in the great place that it is. And we have invested in several great capital projects only recently, for instance, the Bingham Arena, the crematorium, and those just show how we continue to invest to make sure that the services that everybody enjoys in Rushcliffe continue to be great. I'm sure that my cabinet colleagues will be able to highlight one or two issues actually within their cabinet portfolios, but just want to emphasise how important it is that we continue. We have got great staff, great workforce. We've got, for instance, the highest recycling rate in Nottinghamshire. We've got the lowest council tax in Nottinghamshire. So those are all great things that we must continue to enjoy, as well as improving things. There's always work to be done on the environment, and we all know with climate change and with wanting to recycle more, reduce waste, etc. Those are all vitally important things that we need to do. But let's just adopt this corporate strategy and take it forward and continue with the great work over the next 4 years. So I have pleasure in moving the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second the recommendation and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Walker, please.
Good evening and thank you, Madam Mayor. Although we fully acknowledge and commend the work that's gone into this document from the officers, the Labour Group will not be voting in support of this corporate strategy because it isn't reflective of our views. It lacks ambition, both in terms of its commitment to building up local economies in unprecedented hard times, as well as not going anywhere near as far as required to deal with the ongoing pressures brought to bear on residents from climate breakdown. The lack of democratic engagement in the process overall is a major contributor towards our not being able to support this document as a group. In the corporate overview group chaired by the leader's partner, none of the council recommendations were included in the scrutiny agenda papers, yet members were offered the recommendation that the corporate overview group considers the results of the councillors' consultation. It wasn't until days after the meeting and many Labour group objections that the councillor consultation comments were made public. Many of the comments made by councillors have still been left unaddressed and unanswered, which then begs the question, what was the point of the consultation? And also, what is the point of scrutiny? Due to the lack of these points we made in the consultation being fully expressed at scrutiny, I would like to take this opportunity to go through some of the more important issues we feel have been completely overlooked throughout this process. We believed to tackle climate breakdown, we need to make more demands on developers, to include solar panels, as was mentioned already tonight, ground source heat pumps, as well as electric car charging points, essential for all new builds. Include linked bike paths on all new estates, make our green spaces more accessible for all bikes by getting rid of discriminatory barriers, and clear prioritization of active travel and the improvements of public transport. To fulfill the council's obligation in relation to waste, we should consider those who are vulnerable as well as those unable to use our glass collection sites when formulating a recycling strategy. Financially, we would like to see a commitment to community wealth building at the council to look in much more detail at procuring locally with a less extractive-based models to build a more localized capital program. An in-depth study on the use of business rates to help fund a local investment opportunity for new local startups, and a commitment to lobby for a more progressive tax system that will replace council tax, so the council isn't completely reliant on its yearly increments, as well as showing a much more active engagement on asking for clarity on new homes bonuses, as well as the business rates reset, before another council tax rise is decided. We would encourage using the peer challenge as a way of learning how other progressive local governments are trying out new and interesting ideas to increase local democracy and resident participation. Use of the council's asset base to help grow the local economy. We would like to see an assessment of our current asset base and see how it's used in the ways that make it more accessible to those who are traditionally not engaged in their local communities, with a target of engaging people considered vulnerable. For ensuring that the decommissioning of the power station makes a positive contribution to the borough, we would like to see a much broader representation on the Freeport and the Development Corporation boards, engagement with unions, engagement with green businesses, engagement with worker-led cooperatives, the immediate addition of representatives from these groups onto those boards, We would also like to see active travel set as a priority, a detailed plan, an improved public transport to the site, local procurement central to its redevelopment, engagement with community organisations, engagement with employers, skills and inclusion programs and providers, a robust social value strategy, maximising local economies for the community's benefit, a commitment that all new jobs created should pay the national living wage. To aid us with our vision for future development, we would seek the active involvement of local communities about where and when SIL and Section 106 monies are spent. We believe these comments and the others submitted are a kind of practical, real improvement that could be part of the council's corporate
30
strategy.
seconds.
Thank you. That will directly improve the lives of our residents now and in the future. Some progressive yet easily implemented and inexpensive ideas that will keep wealth in our communities in a green, sustainable way.
10 seconds.
Thank you. Yet, because this document has been produced and will be published without any of these suggestions mentioned above, we will not be lending our support to its creation. It isn't a document that brings the residents with us.
Councillor Walker.
It's, as you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of the corporate strategy is presumably to state our values, aims, objectives and priorities for the next term of the council. Who is the target audience? Who reads it? Who writes it? Who can contribute ideas? Is it the officers, the leader and cabinet, the councillors who belong to the majority party? Not the rest of us, for sure. Compared to the budget preparation workshops, which feel like a much more collaborative process, this feels much more like a box-ticking exercise to which the members at large make very little contribution. Yes, there's been consultation on the draft, and before that a very high-level survey about priorities, but there's been very little engagement. The reply will no doubt be that only 4 councillors responded, so everyone else must be happy with it, but that's not how it works, is it? The saddest thing of all is that the 4 responses that did come in seem to have been completely ignored. The table on page 67 was only produced after a request for it at scrutiny. There are 3 columns. The centre column contains the comments received, and the right-hand column, in the time-honoured manner, is supposed to indicate how these comments have been taken into account, what changes have been made to reflect the points raised, and so on. But there's next to nothing in this column. It seems as if very little notice has been taken of the comments. Why did the 4 bother? And what will they do next time there's a consultation? So, apart from the fact that it doesn't appear to have had collective councillor input, what's wrong with it? Well, for a start, it's too backward-facing. Some setting of the scene is useful, perhaps, but this isn't the place to catalogue the council's achievements over the past 4 years. Secondly, it puts too much emphasis on responding to the agendas of others, devolution, government policy, the developers of the Rushcliffe site, and so on, rather than setting our own priorities and influencing others to achieve our aims. I could cite important objectives left out, as Councillor Walker has done, like sorting out the management charges mess for the new residents in new estates, getting solar panels onto roofs, and making new homes more energy efficient, and our agreed strategic aim to increase our hedgerow network by 40%. I could also comment that having a front cover that is dominated by gravestones hardly supports our ambition to be a good place to live, a good place to die, maybe. But it's not about getting a few important things changed or added at this stage. The whole process has been deficient. So I will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes. Councillor.
The question of what type of boroughs, what type of regions, what type of localities, what type of neighborhoods we want to live cannot be divorced from what type of social ties, what type of lifestyle, what type of relationship to nature, what type of aesthetics, what type of technology we desire. The right to the neighborhood, the right to the city cannot be framed as a libertarian individual rights to resources. The right to the city is a public right, is a common right, is the right of collective power, is the right to reshape and reimagine our cities together. All politics are local. We all live in neighborhoods, in communities, and the politics and economics of these communities matter fundamentally on our lives. That's where local government comes. Local government with more devolution and more resources and more empower is a better vehicle to implement transformative changes than national government. National government, from its inception, is built on war and militarism, whereas local government is built on social care, on reproduction of human life in conditions conducive of good health, education, and cultural development. We ideally need more devolution, more democratization, more local powers, but our starting points should be what we had before. We should have local governments that have the ability to control schools and not academies. I understand that's a county issue, but it means we need local governments that can control rents. We need local governments that can build sustainable, affordable houses. We need local government that can own and can run a sustainable transformation. And that should be our starting point. That should be the ceiling. That should be the floor, not the ceiling. We should aim for open, humane, environmentally, socially just municipalities that fight racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, municipalities open to all of us. As a pinnacle, as a fundamental right, should be the right to secure affordable house for all of us, for all the citizens, especially those who did the intersectional marginalized identity. We should view houses as home, not assets. We should view houses for people and not for profit. We should fight against land profiteering, against unregulated privatization, and against excessive profiteering. We should fight for the right of everyone to affordable, to green, sustainable housing, energy efficient, with eco-materials. We should fight to build a lot of council houses under the democratic control of the tenants and the community. We should fight against discrimination on houses. We should fight for special provision on housing for LGBT people, for people that are fleeing domestic violence, for refugees, for immigrants, for disabled people, for all people with marginalized identities. We should try to build more affordable, more accessible houses, as it is a shortage on that, within the aim for all houses to be accessible. We should as well try to merge socially just with green politics. We should rewild our neighborhood.
30 seconds to go. Okay, Councillor Polenta.
Okay, so the last thing I want to say, local government, I agree, should be a vehicle for democracy and democratic participation. Democracy doesn't occur every 4 years. It should be a deliberate act and to have the duty to engage the whole of our community, and we should elevate especially and the voices of intersectional marginalized.
5 seconds to go.
Sorry?
5 seconds.
I'll stop here.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Councillor Sue Malinda? No? Both. Sorry, I thought you'd said earlier neither, but okay, well, whoever first. Richard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ow. My knee just went click. Thank you. There's a lot of work gone into the corporate strategy here for this update. There are some things in here which obviously are welcome. Mention of the Environment Act and the provisions that may come forward to that. Although I do note that quite a few of those things probably won't come into effect until about 2026, it seems, on the timescale that we've got, which is just 1 year to get it in place. I've got a wider concern that has been reflected by a number of other councillors here, and that's about the participation in this. Normally, we're pretty good at engagement within the council, amongst councillors on things. Member development is one we're good at. The budget setting as well. We're normally quite good at that, sort of coming to some kind of collegiate way forward, some kind of view. Even if we don't agree with each other on the politics, there is a good sense of involvement that we've actually understood what's happening with the budget setting process and so on. It doesn't feel like this has worked properly on this document. I'm not sure why. I'm sure that people have done their best to sort of gauge the opinions of people. Was it lack of timing? Was it lack of belief that concerns would be or ideas would be included in the final document? I don't know, but it is a concern, and I am sort of rather worried that it seems to be a theme. And I know it's not just on this side of the chamber as well, because I've heard it voiced privately by members opposite as well. There is, I think, perhaps a lot of good work in here. There's a lot of the things that have been mentioned that I agree with as well that don't sit with this particular council, such as active travel. But we have had the question earlier about PV panels, and from our point of view, anything that would include such as that, and having passive house status, for example, and improving the building regs. Again, that's difficult because it doesn't always fall to us as a local authority. But developers are always going to plead poverty and say, oh, we can't include this or we can't include that. We really do need to push back to make sure that our residents have the best quality housing that we can possibly have built for them in this area. There's a lot of things in here about climate change as well. There is much further that we could go, and we need to go a lot faster as a country, not just as a local council. One of the things that I would particularly make note of, because a number of people have been, again, talking before we came into the chamber about the possibility of flooding, because there are some flood warnings coming in, amber ones I understand at the moment. We always talk about putting in swales and making sure that we have good flood mitigation measures on the new housing. But it's time that we looked at retrofitting flood defences, such as swales, things like that, to our existing areas, to where we've already got housing. Severn Trent have been looking at this in Mansfield. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We've got a lot of 1940s, 1910s, 1900s building stock that will be susceptible to flooding as climate change progresses. We need to look at retrofitting those kind of flood mitigation measures to our existing towns. Thank you for your time on this. And I say my main thrust is I think we've got something wrong on the council participation on this particular document. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sue Malinda, and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to mainly concentrate on the environment section. So I think they're all very laudable aims, but they're just not far enough. So, for instance, the climate change aim is to be carbon neutral within one's own operations. We need to be more ambitious than that and include carbon emissions of everyone over the whole borough and those imported from elsewhere. As in the UK, the emissions produced here are not indicative of how many we are producing, because we are buying things from other countries that are producing many more carbon emissions, and we are using those products. So by buying them, loads of plastic things, for instance, we are ourselves responsible for that carbon emission. So that should be taken into account. And the nature conservation strategy is also very laudable. But again, with a lot of these things, we seem to be relying on waiting for central government to bring out the legislation, and then we'll we'll get on with it. But instead of being innovative and having a go at something ourselves. So, for instance, it's something about having more recycling. Well, what do we mean by that? Do we mean that we want more bulk recycling? I asked a question the other night, which seemed to indicate that is what we mean. We don't want people to produce more waste of any kind, except perhaps, natural waste. But we need to make sure that people are using less and producing less. And that's the kind of waste strategy we need, that kind of encouragement. I know there's a little bit of that, but it just isn't enough. So those Environment Act commitments are following a very, very slow government legislation. For instance, whenever we ask about food waste, for example, we're told that we've got to wait until central government have come up with the idea. We can't, like other councils do, actually have some innovative policies ourselves to have a go at dealing with food waste. We need to be more ambitious. And central government, I'm afraid to say, is forever reneging on its environmental commitments. We need more ambitious biodiversity net gain rather than just adopting the central government levels of 10%. And that also applies not just to the environmental legislation, but also for the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. I've asked before, in fact, it was the first question I ever asked 20 years ago, about the definition of sustainable in sustainable growth. And I've been informed basically that it means economic sustainability. That was all I was told when I first asked the question. So we have got better, but it does still seem to be the overriding meaning. And unfortunately, not the real meaning of sustainability, which is referring to the fact that we live on a finite planet and we cannot keep growing unsustainably so that it is not fit for us to live on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh my goodness me, talk about glass half empty. I must admit, when I first read this document, I felt quite good about it, and I do still feel quite good about it. Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with looking back on things? I mean, this is a strategy to look forward, because at the end of the day, we're an organisation and you've got to have a plan. And being a council, you need to share that plan. So that's what this is doing. But there is nothing wrong in looking back at what we've done, because frankly, I think we should all agree that we should be quite not complacent, but proud of what we've achieved one way and another over the last during the course of the previous plan. And reading through this, I read good things. I read about sustainable growth. I read about economic development and the creation of employment opportunities, which is surely what we want. There is a lot to do with the environment in here. We're referring to the climate change strategy. We're talking about the quality of life. So these are all the things that are important to us, and all the things that are important to the people out there as well. I hear what's been said about the sort of lack of response or councillor involvement. Well, everyone was given an opportunity to do so, and some people did, and others didn't. Could it be argued that people have been quite happy with what Rushcliffe has been doing so far, and so carry on doing more of the same and building? Perhaps that's an unfortunate expression, but building on what we've been doing already over the last few years. So I really would try and reassure you not to be so depressed and downhearted about it. I mean, unless I'm just reading it in a slightly different way, but it's a good document, and a lot of work's been put into this by members and officers as well. So let's be a little bit more positive. It is what it is, and it at least shows that what the council is aiming to do over the term of this strategy. So I think it should be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, first of all, Councillor Butler's covered a lot of the general points I wanted to raise. I think it's worth emphasising them again. First of all, the officers did a lot of work on this. I know from the discussion we had from the very first cabinet meetings we had, the amount of work going in, the amount of passion there from the officers who did it. So I want to pay tribute to them, because it is a heavy document in terms of its right. It's a heavy document because it's right to set out how important we set that document in terms of how it guides us over the next 4 years. In terms of consultation, I think it's worth saying the survey went out to all councils. Yes, I know that one submission was from a joint group, but if you look at those submissions come back in, it shows the vast majority of this council are in support of the consultation that was put together, because the amount of comments coming back are nowhere near enough to be anywhere near a majority to object to what's in front of you. And I think it's worth saying as well, in terms of looking backwards, as has already been said, it is right to show where we come from, what we've done to actually set that stall out for the next 4 years. And talking about my own area, when we fed in from the very start, I know from the officers and what we were saying, we very much valued the input coming back from residents and from councillors alike. And a lot of effort went into getting people's opinion. As is stated in reports, it went out in Rushcliffe Reports, the first edition. It was put in very quickly when we wanted to sign that off as we came into the new administration. It had a reach of 50,000 on social media. That's the amount of work that comms did to absolutely push it out there as much as possible to people. And in terms of the leisure stuff itself in there, I mean, we've got councils, a neighbouring council to us, so this week decided to close the leisure centre. As you can see in the report, what we're setting out to people is to show what we actually want to do. And I'm really proud that we are investing in our leisure centres, our facilities, but also work with our local partners. For example, the big Rushcliffe Green Book, where we're working with local partners about what everyone can do in terms of keeping healthy. It doesn't matter what money you've got in your pocket, in terms of basic exercise that everyone can do, which has a massive impact on people's health and well-being. So really welcome the report. And again, I really hope that people can vote for this tonight, because it has gone through extensive consultation. It's really important to set out to residents what we plan to do in the next 4 years, and also worth saying that council in the room have a chance to feed into the scrutiny process, because there will be the scorecard process that's been going scrutiny for years while I've been on overview, and will continue to go there, where councils have the opportunity to ask questions and hold us to account on how we're doing against the task set out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gowland. Thank you. Do you mind if I sit down? Sorry, I've just got that back. Sorry. Councillor Wheeler did sort of make the point I wanted to make, but I wanted to make it absolutely clear, because a few people have said there have been 4 councillors respond to the consultation. As has been pointed out, it was actually 3 councillors plus 1 group. Councillor Walker took the trouble to consolidate our responses, spent time doing that to make it easier for the officers to handle them, and the leading group to handle them. Yes, we are a financially viable council, and so we should be, because we have more Band D houses than the neighbouring councils, which have a lot of Band B and A houses. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, yes, Councillor Way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add to Councillor Vander's comments about the consultation and the fact that we didn't seem to get enough discussion. How we do the budget briefings is excellent, and people have a chance to put into that. But on terms of the consultation, the assumption is if you didn't reply, you agree with it. And that's not really how consultation should work. There is valuable to have positive comments to them as negative comments. So I think we should encourage everybody to respond, even if it is just to say, I agree with this. Because at the moment it looks like only 3 people and 1 group have bothered to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? No. Okay. Councillor Brennan, do you wish to?
Yes, thank
reply,
you.
Respond?
Well, it's not surprising that I welcome the strategy. It is a high-level strategy. It's a living document. We can respond flexibly, and we can be fleet of foot throughout the life of our strategic corporate plan. And we can change things as events change in order to respond to them. I don't agree that it's not ambitious. I think it's ambitious within what is realistically deliverable for a borough council, and it stretches ourselves to continue to deliver high-quality services, efficient services, cost-effective services, and to stand by those priorities and objectives that we've had previously around the environment and around economic development and around housing. The Labour Group have given us a list of projects, some of which don't fall within the ambit of the Borough Council, some of which are extraordinarily radical, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but you would have to reorganise the entire structure of local government funding and the way our local economy functions for the most part to be able to deliver many of the sort of projects that you're describing. So if you get a majority, that will be within your gift to deliver. And if the people of Rushcliffe believe that those are the sort of schemes they want to see delivered, they will vote for more of you so that you have the power and influence to bring some of those projects in, which I personally wouldn't agree with, and I suspect many on these benches wouldn't agree with either. In terms of consultation, actually, we can always improve consultation. I think there is a point about passive consultation, and it needs to be proactive, and I would take that on board, and I hope some members of our group, or the members of my group would too. But consultation doesn't mean that everything you say gets put into a strategy. Consultation doesn't mean that everything you think is important should therefore be in the strategy. In the end, it is for us, the leading group with the officers, to put together that strategy. Taking account of that consultation does not mean that we simply adopt all of the ideas that have been put forward. That's not consultation. So I accept maybe we look at the process and maybe we look at ways of being more inclusive if people feel it wasn't. But that doesn't mean and shouldn't mean that your expectation is that if you come up with some scheme that's you think is extremely worthwhile, it is de facto going to be included in the strategy, because it's not necessarily so. From the perspective of my own portfolio, I am really pleased to see for the first time that there's an economic growth strategy included in our corporate strategy. This will be all the more important, I think, in light of the debate we just had about devolution and the combined authority. We need to support our local economy, ensure it remains buoyant. Everybody knows that a local economy with a variety of businesses and flourishing retail and hospitality sectors will bring more investment, business growth and quality jobs to our residents. And our new employment sites will support that ambition. We also have the enormous challenge and opportunity of Rushcliffe site and some of the commitments managing growth in the Levelling Up Bill. There will be fantastic opportunities for the borough, possibly the biggest single economic development opportunity that this borough has seen for decades. And we set out our plans in how we're going to engage with that and how we're going to maximise those opportunities. And it's already been said that we make clear that our commitments to the environment, to net zero and ongoing delivery of cost-effective services to our residents are key priorities for us. So I welcome this report and I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, it's disappointing to hear that the Labour group aren't going to be supporting this, because I think, as I would do, there's an awful lot of good things happening. As has been mentioned, looking back on the history provides the context for then moving forward. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I just pick up on Councillor Gowland, and I absolutely accept what you said. It was a group submission, and that's absolutely fine. I've no issues with that at all. You quite rightly said it sort of culminated a lot of the comments together. So, yeah, no problem with that. I think in terms of what Councillor Walker talked about, I think it was Councillor Walker, public transport and active travel. And I mean, that's principally, I admit that there is some active travel involved with the borough in planning new developments, but public transport and the retrospective aspects of active travel, of course, are county council activities. So we wouldn't put in our corporate strategy for a borough public provision of public transport services. I think the point to make, and lots of people have made comments about consultation, and the comments are welcome. And just because somebody's made a comment, it doesn't mean that it has to be written into the document, because some of the responses to the consultation are comments, and in some cases questions. So you wouldn't put those into a corporate strategy. However, I would also say it is a living document. It's not a document to just, oh right, we all approve it and we stick it on the shelf for 4 years, and come 2027 we dust it off and look at it again. It's designed to be an aid memoir, and it is there to be amended if we feel that it is appropriate to be amended. So it could well be that some comments made do actually come into play. Councillor Richard Mallender, yeah, I agree with what you said about swales and retrospective, etc. The difficulty is that a lot of our villages and towns have got very antiquated, Victorian brick culverts. Excuse me, and that would cost an absolute fortune to try and dig those up and make those bigger. I'm not saying we're just not going to do it, but we've just got to bear in mind that everything has to be proportionate. But having said that, you talked about swales, and indeed in my own ward, the three borough councillors, councillors Upton, Brennan and myself, we've had flooding issues in a particular part of the borough, and we have been talking to the developer who had built a whole load of houses, and we are hopefully they are amenable to providing retrospective additional attenuation in view of the flooding problems. So it is possible, and that could happen. Councillor Sue Mallender, I absolutely, totally agree with you about the environment and about waste. Yes, our absolute priority should be, firstly, to make strenuous efforts to reduce the waste being produced in the first place. But where it has been produced, we need to improve our recycling capacity as well. But certainly in terms of reducing and minimising waste, we need to get to the producers
30 seconds.
of packaging, etc., in the first place and get them to reduce it. So actually, Madam Mayor, I think that's just covered all the comments I want to make. Even at this late stage, Madam Mayor, I plead with the Labour group and the other opposition members to, in the light of my comments, to change their minds and support this corporate strategy, which is actually, as you obviously know, has been drawn up by the ruling group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, well, we'll go to sorry, yes, Councillor Walker. Yes.
Can I request a recorded vote, please?
A recorded vote. Okay, yes. Okay. So, do you want to do the recorded vote?
Okay. Councillor Barney. Councillor Billing. Councillor Birch. Councillor Bird. Councillor Brennan. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Calvert.
Against.
Councillor Chaplin.
Against.
Councillor Chewings.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cumberlack.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Della.
Abstain.
Councillor Eddiebean. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Fletcher.
Against.
Councillor Gaunt.
Against.
Councillor Georgiou. 4. Councillor Gowland. Councillor Grocott.
Against.
Councillor Inglis.
4.
Councillor Richard Mallender. Councillor Sue Mallender. Councillor Mason.
4.
Councillor Matthews.
4.
Councillor Om.
4.
Councillor Perec.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
Councillor Plant. Councillor Polenta. Councillor Regan. Councillor Sims. Councillor Solomon.
4.
Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Upton.
4.
Councillor Verdi,
For.
Councillor Jen Walker,
Against.
Councillor Rex Walker,
For.
Councillor Way,
Abstain.
Councillor Wells,
For.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler,
For.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler,
For.
Councillor Williams.
Okay, thank you very much. I declare that the vote is carried. Thank you. I did say about having a break at 8:30, but we've got licensing next. So I would like to cover that report and then take a break after the licensing. So we'll go forward on for statement of licensing policy. Councillor Inglis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, licensing. So under the Licence Act of 2003, this council is required to produce such a statement of licensing policy every 5 years, which is now due. The draft policy was circulated for public consultation and was endorsed by the Cross-Party Licensing Committee on October 17th this year. As the council is responsible for licensing and regulated licensed premises such as pubs, off licences, late night takeaways and registered members clubs in respect of the 4 licensing objectives, which are prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. It also includes the issue of personal licences to sell alcohol and to transfers and variations of such licences. The authority also possesses notices for temporary occasional events or TEMs. The amendments to the current policy are outlined in the report, as you'll see in Appendix C, and I take it you've all read those. So I don't propose to detail or define them all in detail, but they do include references and updates to antisocial behaviour, drunken drink spiking, domestic violence, including safeguarding of women and girls, which are welcomed. There is new inclusion in the transfer of pavement licences to the council and an amended there's an amendment to the response from the Director of Public Health in regards to specified areas. The statement of licensing is required. It's been brought up to date, taking into account changes in legislation and updated policies. It is proportionate and relevant to the council's obligations. Has been through scrutiny, so I have no hesitation in supporting it. I'd ask you all to endorse the recommendations so it can be adopted to come into force on the 7th of January 2024. So I recommend that the council approves the adoption of the statement of licence policy attached to the report as in Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second this and reserve the right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a member of the Licensing Committee, I can confirm that this comprehensive and technical document was examined in detail and discussed. There are a couple of things I'd like to talk about. There was, I think, unanimous agreement to change paragraphs 4.7 and 4.8, which in the draft version named areas of the borough as having relatively higher levels of alcohol-associated harm. Raised as a public health concern and based on evidence, including such things as alcohol-related hospital admissions, the areas mentioned seemed somewhat random, and it did seem that such measures will vary with time. And I think it was Councillor Grocott who brought up that identifying these areas as being a problem seemed unfair. The reason for identifying them was to encourage applicants there to provide details of any mitigating measures they plan to put in place to reduce alcohol-related harms. And it seemed sensible to expect this from all applicants in all areas, not just these areas. Identifying areas may also give the impression that the alcohol-related harm was down to local pubs, clubs, damaging their reputation and business, and does not take into account that the problem could be caused by people drinking at home. I'm particularly pleased that the policy emphasises that employers have a duty of care for employees and includes the requirement to adopt a risk-based assessment approach to ensuring the safety of all staff working late or in social hours to facilitate a safe and affordable journey home. However, I would be even happier if it was stronger. The Unite the Union have a campaign at the moment, the Get Me Home Safely campaign, which calls for the granting of licences to be dependent on the provision of free transport home. And I hope we can work towards this. At the committee meeting, a question was asked about how we ensure that this happens. It's no good if you're not aware that you can ask for help getting home safely, and it's not always easy to do. Particularly would be the case for an 18-year-old working in a pub on a 0 hours contract. And this brings me back to Unite. The obvious way would be to encourage the unionisation of our hospitality venues, as being in a union would inform and protect our workers. We thank Jeff Carpenter and the other officers involved in updating this policy, and we are happy to support its implementation.
Thank you. Councillor Chewings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep this short. This went through licensing the other month. It had broad support and scrutiny at that meeting with the changes that went forward. Fully support the document, and would like to go on record to thank the officers for the significant work that's gone into this document. So thank you, and we'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Mallender.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Also happy to support this. Yes, as others have said, we gave this document a thorough read through and sort of a very, very extensive discussion at the committee. It was excellent sort of introduction and taken at the by the officers concerned as well. We had a lot of new members on the committee, so it was great to have that assistance for people. We're very pleased that the suggestion put by Councillor Grocott that was, you know, to sort of take out those named areas from the report was getting unanimous support as well. So all in all, excellent piece of work, and happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay. Go to Councillor Matthews, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Grateful to Councillor Chaplin for bringing up the matters and her time on the committee when we discussed this. There was unanimous consent amongst the whole committee about the amendments, majority of which were procedural and regulatory amendments due to changes nationally. And the reason the public health comments on the particular areas that were named were taken out was partly because there was no information behind them, and the committee as a whole felt it was unfair to name certain areas, but we did feel that there was complete consensus that we did feel that the aspirations of it were valid. So we applied that not just to those named areas, but to every area within Rushcliffe, so that everybody had to have that additional concern taken into account. We were all very critical of the Get You Home Safely part of the amendments, and we were assured, and I was personally reassured by the officers that they do actually check on this, both with the licensees and with the staff individually, not necessarily in front of their employers, to ensure that this actually happens. And I would again just like to concur with Councillor Chewings that would like to thank the officers for the hard work that they put into this amendment, and would recommend that you all accept it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Inglis, do you wish to speak in reply?
Yeah, I'd really like to thank everybody involved in that decision, especially the committee. I know is an arduous task going through that document. Yeah, it's a long document, it's a detailed document. It becomes a technical document, really. So just endorse that fact, that work is cross-party and it's for the benefit of all the Rushcliffe residents. Yes, we need to look at that getting home safety policy. That's something to take forward and look at. We need to ensure that we're getting the staff home safely. We really do. But again, it's all about safety. It's all about safeguarding our residents. So I just want to thank everybody for their input and to the officers for the report. Thank you.
Right. We'll go to the vote. All in favour? Okay. Anybody against? No abstentions? No. Right. Okay. I declare that the vote is carried. I'll give you 5 minutes. If there's a queue at any stage, well, you can have 6, okay. But otherwise, if you could be back within 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillors, can I ask you to take your seats again, please?
Right. Okay. Right. Would you all like to take your seats, please? I can whistle.
I'll just move on to item 13.
Would you like to take your seats, please? No, I'll just shout. Thank you. Right. The next item on the agenda is item 13. Unlucky for some. Right. No. Sorry. Yes. Well, I was thinking of doing something like that for my charity, and we could all sit and have a go at bingo or something, but it could be quite exciting. Anyway, notice of motions. To receive notices of motion submitted under standing order, paragraph 4.38. A. Notice of motion to be put by Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam
And
Mayor.
seconded by Councillor Solomon.
Hope that wasn't.
Oh, sorry. I have something to say. Councillor Brennan has notified us that she wishes to make an alteration to the motion using standard order paragraph 4.58. The move to alter the motion does not require a seconder, but will require the consent of the meeting. Councillor Brennan.
Hopefully everybody's had a copy, if it's not on the screen, but I would like to include an additional bullet point 3
there
on the motion, which is in red, which includes that single dwellings should also be required to contain 2 swift bricks.
Okay, so we need to have a vote to signal whether the meeting will consent to the alteration. Do you all understand? Can you see what the... Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, all in favour of consent to the alteration? Yeah. Okay, the vote's carried. So I would like to invite Councillor Brennan to move the motion, please. Get 10 minutes for this.
Thank you. 10 minutes. That's generous. It doesn't have to be that long. At the end of my drive in Rushcliffe-on-Trent, I've got one of those old style wooden bush shelters with a pitched roof and 4 walls with a gap in the front. And unfortunately, for the last few years, this bus shelter has attracted antisocial behaviour. It's an enclosed space. It's largely invisible from the road. Buses are infrequent and there are none on that bit of the road after 6 p.m. in the evening. And it's become a magnet for drinking, smoking, this is not for me, for drug taking. They leave mess in the bus shelter. It's been damaged. There's bottles, cigarette ends, drug taking and so on. So I'd got an agreement with the County Council to update this bus shelter to a more modern version, paid for by local developers, in the hope that this would discourage this antisocial behaviour. But for several years now, this bus shelter has been home to nesting swifts, sometimes swallows, but frequently swifts. And for the last 3 years, those nests have been destroyed deliberately. Still, the birds come back every spring, optimistically to try to build their nests, and every year they're destroyed. This year, 2 nests were destroyed, and the young birds were killed, apparently stamped on, and left for dead in the bush shelter. And it caused a great deal of anger and upset locally, not least to myself, but everybody was very distressed by this event. Clearly, replacing this bush shelter will remove that nesting site for the birds, but the nests are being destroyed anyway, so it seems worth doing. So, having agreed to do this, I decided to see if I could find or create some kind of alternative nesting site on my own property, which is not far from the bush shelter, in the hope that when the birds return next spring, they will find somewhere suitable on my property to nest. And as I started to look at this, I realised just how endangered these birds are now, which I knew they were, but I hadn't appreciated how badly, which brought me to swift bricks. All this new building across our borough, with so little of, if any of it, providing suitable nesting sites for these birds. And swifts must surely be one of our most iconic breeding birds. Seeing and hearing these distinctive migratory birds swooping through the skies in the spring portends summer every year. But the decline in insects, loss of habitat, modern farming methods, and loss of suitable nesting sites has seriously impacted on the birds, with numbers declining significantly over recent decades, perhaps as much as 60% in the last 25 years. Modern building methods, better insulated properties, the loss of old and abandoned buildings to renovation and demolition have massively reduced the availability of desirable nesting sites and seen the loss of many historical sites that birds have returned to for generations. They are also now on the UK Red List of endangered species. I think we're all proud of the rural and semi-rural character of our borough, and we wish to preserve that character and enhance and protect its wildlife and ecology. Swift bricks, approved by the RSPB, are designed to look like typical house bricks. They feature a small opening at the front which swifts can access to build their nests, and they can be used by a variety of other birds as well, sparrows, blue tits, great tits, and so on. Including swift bricks in the new buildings in Rushcliffe has the potential to halt the decline of swifts in this borough, while also providing safe nesting places for many other types of birds. Swift bricks are very easy to include into routine building practices and will result in a permanent, discreet, maintenance-free means of providing these much-needed nesting sites for this declining species of birds. So I would like to move the following motion. The Council agrees to use Policy 38 of Local Plan Part 2 to apply a planning condition that will see swift bricks incorporated in the vast majority of new commercial and residential developments in the borough. In addition to any biodiversity mitigation or enhancements normally requested through the planning process. This will require a minimum of 2 swift bricks per suitable dwelling in at least 50% of any proposed new development, require commercial and industrial developments to have a minimum of 3 swift bricks installed per appropriate unit. On appropriate single dwelling schemes, require 2 swift bricks, that's on one house, not on one story. Be attached to all relevant planning permissions for new buildings granted in the borough from the earliest opportunity. I very much hope Council can support this motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Solomon, second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second this motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. We'll go on to the discussion. Councillor Gowland, please.
Thank you. I'm going to change what I was going to say because your story is very compelling. Obviously we approve of this. It's a great idea, and actually, I'm having my house renovated, so I'm now going to get swift bricks in it. But I would say, it could be stronger. We had a question from resident earlier about cutting the hedgerows, and I think it would be good if we take every opportunity to explain to residents why we have a no-mow policy, because a lot of people think it's just we're trying to be untidy or lazy or save money, and explaining that it's to try and increase insects to help support this wildlife would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Malinda, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, obviously we fully support this motion. In fact, when watching Spring Watch earlier this year, it featured an elderly gentleman actually called John Stimpson, and he makes handmade boxes, and he makes thousands and thousands of them. So we have bought some Swift boxes for our house, although we haven't yet put them up. So if anyone knows anyone who will, for a reasonable price, put them up in a Victorian house that is very, very tall, then we might be able to get them up there ready for next spring. A lot of these recommendations were recommended by Notts Wildlife Trust and the Rushcliffe Nature Conservation Strategy Implementation Group, which is a name almost as bad or possibly worse than the East Midlands DWP. All those ideas, including swift bricks and indeed sparrow shelves and other suggestions were made as part of the local plan, but we're pleased to see that this goes rather further. So yes, we'll definitely be supporting this, and I hope that it will actually happen and the developers won't be able to find some excuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I say anything, I found your story absolutely horrific. Is there no end to people's cruelty to innocent creatures? This is a very welcome addition to our ongoing efforts to protect and encourage wildlife. We should continue to expand our protection measures for wildlife and their habitats. We need to work with developers to ensure that a couple of bird boxes in an otherwise fairly sterile garden of a show home and a tiny bit of rough ground to compensate for the loss of Skylark's territory, which doesn't really make any positive contribution. These shouldn't be allowed to become the norm. A few single nest boxes will not meet the 10% minimum biodiversity net gain. The inclusion of Swift boxes in the majority of residential and commercial premises is a huge and significant step forward. Many applications that are approved already include the provision of bird and bat boxes and hedgehog highways. My question is, what systems are in place to monitor the installation and the continued presence of these measures? Thank you, Councillor Brennan, for discussing this with me, and I hope we will be able to continue to work on this together. In fact, I've already suggested to a local contractor that they contact you. We will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Oh yes, Councillor Billy. I can't see.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Councillor Brennan, for bringing this forward. Assuming we all vote for this, may I ask, will it be able to be applied to planning applications that are submitted but not yet decided?
Councillor Birch. I can't quite see you. But...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief. I support the motion. I think it's very sensible, it's very cost effective, and I thank Councillor Brennan for bringing it.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Clark.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I wasn't going to speak, but just in response to Councillor Billing, I think the answer will be is that you won't be able to make it compulsory for applications that will already be submitted. However, it doesn't stop people trying to bear with me.
It hangs on an existing policy.
Apparently, as it hangs on an existing policy.
Yeah. Policy 38.
Right. I think the answer might be yes. I was going to say we need to encourage them to do it, but it sounds like you've already got your wish.
Well, if there's nobody else to speak, Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much to all the councillors for their positive comments supporting this motion. I've done quite a bit of research on swifts, knowing I was going to speak tonight, and they're amazing little birds that eat and drink and even sleep on the wing. They only stop for about 3 months of the year when they come to the UK to nest and raise their brood. They mate for life and they return to the same nests every year. And the decline in the breeding population has been, sadly, through the loss of suitable nesting sites due to upgrades in houses. So this is a very, very welcome solution. It's affordable, market-ready solution. There are Swift bricks available in all colours from £10 up to £40, and they're very easily implemented. And they meet the bird requirements of being high. The over 50% meets the requirement because they like to nest in clusters and they shield the birds from heat, which again is a requirement of being successful with raising their brood. So it's a very positive motion, and as per Councillor Grocock's suggestion earlier this evening, I think it's something where we can all come together positively and support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan, you respond.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for your supportive words. Just briefly, in terms of could it be stronger, I did have a lot of conversations with people that know more about this than me, and there is a sort of natural limit to how many birds are likely to nest in one place, because my original motion was 100%, and I was told that that wasn't feasible and probably a problem if 100% of nests on 1,000 houses were occupied. Hence, I went for this, so I thought it was realistic, achievable, and suitable for the birds. Monitoring the installation of the bricks, or monitoring the usage of the bricks, it's very important. I'm going to talk to the team here about how we do that. We are going to look at putting something in the design guide as well about them, because there's some specifics about the location where these bird bricks need to be, not facing south, so they don't get too hot, of 5 meters high, etc. But I would like to put something in place that maybe we come back in 3 summers' time and we can assess. I don't know if we have a baseline. I don't know, but I appreciate the sentiment, and we do need to monitor it. Are people blocking the bricks? Are birds using them? We need some kind of assessment as to whether this has been successful. I don't know what it is at the moment, but I take it on board. And otherwise, I thank you all very much for your supportive comments.
Thank you. We'll now go to the vote on the motion. Oh, sorry. No. Oh. Right, okay, you might get a mince pie before 10 o'clock. Right, we now go to a vote on the motion, so all those in favour? Yeah, has it passed? Everyone? Okay, so I declare that the motion is carried. Thank you. Right. Now we have a motion, a notice of motion, which is put by Councillor Calvert, and then I'll come to Councillor Gowan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very grateful to be able to move this motion this evening, as it deals with an issue of such importance, not only to the residents of Rushcliffe, but also to the council itself, how it manages its staff and how it delivers its services. I must, however, say at the outset that I was advised not to submit this motion, but encouraged instead to raise the matter as a question or to complete a scrutiny matrix form. The Labour group listened very carefully to this advice, but concluded that the issue of men's and boys' violence against women and girls merited a wider discussion as a motion. This will give every councillor the opportunity to speak on the subject and to vote in favour of monitoring the actions we take as a council and reporting them to the community's scrutiny group annually and quantitatively where appropriate. It's very timely that we discuss the issue this evening, as we are nearing the end of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence organised by the White Ribbon UK, a registered charity. Hundreds of organisations up and down the country have implemented a programme of action during this period. Violence experienced by women and girls takes many forms. Some behaviour and words may seem harmless, but normalising them ignores their short and long-term impacts and can lead to more extreme violence. This is not a women's issue, although it is often portrayed as such. We're talking here about unacceptable behaviour of men and boys against women and girls. The Labour Group acknowledges that this Council has taken action against domestic violence in areas such as staff training, strategic housing and community safety initiatives. However, much of this seems to be uncoordinated. There does not seem to be an approved overall strategy and associated action plan which is necessary to achieve accreditation by White Ribbon UK. One of its accreditation requirements states that organisations must demonstrate a real commitment to ending men's violence against women and girls by developing a 3-year action plan using a framework which they provide. This is an accreditation already achieved by other local authorities and public bodies in Nottinghamshire. Currently, there's only limited evidence of the effectiveness of our work against domestic violence. That is why we would ask all councillors to support the motion, which, if approved, would contribute greatly to a future action plan and strengthen the case for the Council to achieve accreditation by White Ribbon UK. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. I second this motion, reserve the right to speak.
Okay, thank you. Right. Any discussion? Councillor Inglis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor Calvert, thank you very much for raising this important issue. It's absolutely we need to ensure that we as a council remain actively involved in the reduction of victim support and guidance towards reducing and reporting domestic violence at an early stage. As you alluded to yourself, I feel that the proposed motion can be strengthened in its ask. And I feel in its current form, it does lend itself to a question to full council rather than a motion. However, it does provide the base to create a more substantial motion for specific scrutiny opportunity to ensure the council are doing it right rather than just an audit being reported. So I would propose an amendment.
Have you got a seconder, Councillor Inglis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, happy to second Madam Mayor and reserve the right to speak.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Councillor consents now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Domestic violence and abuse is not just about physical assault to a victim, and females are particularly vulnerable and form the majority of victims. So do you want to read the amendment first? Okay, yes. Changing the amendment then is Rushcliffe Borough Council will continue to work proactively with its partners and stakeholders in the common goal of reducing all types of domestic violence and abuse, especially that aimed towards women and girls. This council will submit a scrutiny matrix item through the relevant portfolio holder to the corporate overview group to report on the actions of Rushcliffe Borough Council's undertakes in the reduction of domestic violence and abuse against women and girls. I feel the update to this is relevant to give more weight and meaning to what we're trying to achieve. As I said earlier, domestic violence and abuse is not just about physical assault to a victim, and females are particularly vulnerable and form the majority of victims. But victims can also be male, a child, a partner, ex-partner or family member. It includes coercive behaviour, honour and FGM, sexual violence, financial restrictions, humiliation and mental torment. Stalking and harassment as a pattern of behaviour where the abuser exerts power and control. Figures are increasing, whether that is in the confidence of reporting or an increase in offences is hard to determine. I expect it to be both. The Rushcliffe Borough Council takes its responsibility seriously with relevant groups and agencies at various levels, all striving to tackle the concerning increase in reported domestic violence and abuse, not just in the borough, but county and nationally. They include the Not Safer Board, the Domestic Abuse Partnership, and the South Notts Community Safety Partnership. The South Notts Community Safety Partnership also oversees domestic homicide reviews, which critically examines all the factors and circumstancing surrounding local domestic murders, ensuring best practice, but importantly, identifying any opportunities that have been missed in early identification of the victim by all agencies involved before that submission to the Home Office. We promoted the White Ribbon campaign each year to highlight the support and awareness and action. We do not want to miss opportunities to enhance what is already in place or to breed complacency. As can be exampled in the licensing report with the update to domestic violence. We have the website on the Rushcliffe website, which is averaging 14 hits per month, which is up to date in current information. Domestic violence can affect any of us. It probably has to some people in this room. It's normally hidden behind closed doors, and concerningly, from experience, victims can be very reluctant to report until several escalating occurrences have happened. So any actions to promote and enhance the reporting and to reach out to victims through cross-party scrutiny review needs to be embraced. So I propose the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
He's already seconded.
We've done it. Okay. Councillor Calvert.
Okay. We've had an opportunity. We've had an opportunity as a group to just about discuss the amendment, and as it stands like that, it still feels inadequate. And I would recommend that we add maybe a sentence or two to it to make us look more forward.
No, so you don't. No. We've got to vote on the proposed amendment first.
We have to go on what we have before us first. Okay. And then you say that you wish to refuse it. You don't accept the amendment, and then come back to you. Okay. Sorry, it's the procedure.
That's fine. Okay, so we don't accept the amendment.
Okay. Thank you. So does anybody wish to speak on that amendment? Does anybody else want to speak?
Oh, Councillor Perec. Councillor Perec.
Oh, Councillor Perec, sorry.
Councillor Gowland as well wants to speak.
And Councillor Gowland.
I support this amendment. I support this amendment for various reasons. One of them being Rushcliffe Borough Council already does many things to support victims of domestic violence. It takes the safety of its residents and visitors very seriously, especially of that of women and girls. During 2023, the majority of the Home Office Safer Streets 4 funding allocated to the borough, around 200k was spent on CCTV and ANPR cameras. Safer Streets 5 will see the purchase of further cameras for all our hotspot locations. Domestic abuse and wider associated issues such as honor violence, forced marriage, and FGM affects many people across all strands of our community. It overwhelmingly affects women and children, but can also happen to men and to other adults in a close family relationship. It can happen in gay and lesbian relationships. Many people associate these issues with something that involves a deliberate assault, but it can comprise a range of behaviors such as emotional, financial, or sexual abuse. You can experience domestic abuse on any of these levels, and physical violence may not always be present. Rushcliffe Council has a sanctuary scheme The sanctuary scheme might be of help to people who feel unsafe in their home after they have ended their relationship and are considering leaving because of this. It's a very practical scheme, a free scheme which enhances security and will then enable people to remain at their home and maintain links to their schools, work, and social and family networks. Rushcliffe, most of the bars in Rushcliffe are also joining the Ask for Angela campaign. If you're on a date night out with someone who's making you feel uneasy, threatened, you can approach the staff and ask for Angela, and they'll recognize this as your call for help. This will assist you in calling a taxi and keep you safe during the wait. Bars with training staff will display the posters for the campaign in the ladies' toilets. We also follow the Clare's Law. From September 2012, Nottinghamshire was one of the chosen authorities as the trial areas in this country for Clare's Law. This means individuals or an agency can now make requests to the police to find out if a new or current partner has a history of abusive behavior in previous relationships. Given the fact that Rushcliffe Borough Council is already actively having so many different schemes, is working with various stakeholders, I wholeheartedly support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Regan, did you wish to speak? No. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Okay, Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. We considered a scrutiny matrix at the time when we wrote this amendment, and the reason we went for the option that we wrote here, which was an audit to the committee, was very specific. We recognise the council are doing some things. At the time when we put this motion together, I went into the toilets and changing rooms in the Parkwood Leisure Centre and checked that in the ladies there were no signs. So there is more that can be done. There's more training that can be done. The Just Don't campaign is not aimed at women, it's aimed at men. There's more that can be done. But the point about having quantitative data and a regular annual audit is it allows us to see, and it's the same with everything, of course, how we are making progress and to evaluate what we're doing in a formal manner. Whereas a scrutiny matrix, I'm sure, you've explained that, of course, the council are doing things, but we want to make sure we're doing everything we can do and get this white ribbon accreditation. So the plan of the audit was to actually manage and monitor on an annual basis, not just take a scrutiny in a one-off term. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Gowland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And there were 2 points I wanted to make about the amendment. The first is that it changes it from being an annual activity to a one-off activity. And I think there's certainly some merit in it being an annual activity, at least, at a period when there is concern about it. And the second thing is that the scrutiny matrix would be through the relevant portfolio holder. And I think, as it's been raised by another member, at the very least, I would see that the relevant portfolio holder working in conjunction with the proposer of the motion. So those are the 2 observations I have on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Solomon.
Thank you. I'd like to support this motion, and the council does a lot of work already, and the view to continue working proactively is incredibly important. I was delighted with the Rushcliffe Awards last week that the winner of the main prize was Nicola Brindley, MBE, for her amazing work she does for J9 and Tara Angels. About 2 years ago, myself and Councillor Barney actually attended a course that Nicola was running, and it was absolutely heartbreaking, the stories and the coercive behaviour that can happen. And 25% of domestic violence starts when a woman is first pregnant in a relationship. So there are triggers, it can happen all the time. This is a motion that encourages the council to carry on working proactively, but I would say that we, all as individuals, can do our bit as well. Councillor Barney and I got trained. We can now use the J9 logo, which signals to anyone men or women, and women are the main victims of domestic violence, that we're safe. You can come to us and reach out for help, and we know how to help you. So I would very much flag up, please consider attending one of Nicola's courses to get J9 accredited as well, so you can individually help those who need it. Thank you.
Got some more. Oh, got some more.
I think Ted Birch. I think
Was
Councillor
it
Birch.
Councillor Birch? Councillor Birch. Sorry, I can't see.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for bringing this motion. It's obviously a very important and emotive topic. I don't think anyone in their right mind would speak against, obviously, being against domestic violence. I would like to point out, however, and I welcome the language in the amendment, that not all victims of domestic violence are female. Of course, it's the overwhelming majority. Women's Aid site statistics, 77% of victims are female, 16% are male. And I would just ask why there is no mention of men. There seems to be, in my view, a rather, speaking nationally here, a rather, the zeitgeist seems to be going against men, and men seem to be forgotten. So I don't think men should be forgotten, whilst of course acknowledging the vast majority of victims of domestic violence are women. So I will be going against the amendment because I do agree in principle with the original motion. But again, I would just like to make the point, let's not forget men in all of this as well.
Okay. Councillor Way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge Councillor Solomon's comments, and Councillor Barney also knows about this. The J9 is training is excellent, and I would recommend everybody here to attend any opportunity they get. It was moving, emotional, and shocking in all the same things. I'd also like to support what Councillor Birch has said, because yes, the majority of this is against women, but there are men who suffer from domestic violence, and I think we need to acknowledge that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walker.
I just want to make a couple of points. The J9 training, the three of us have all been at for Reddington, and that is part of this kind of annual quantitative audit, is to kind of make sure that we are accessing that type of training. That is the original motion, and that's the point of it. Because I have friends who work for Juno and Equation, and they have specifically said to us that Rushcliffe Borough Council are not accessing those training arrangements. So aside from the J9, there are these other institutions that exist, and we are not accessing that, and that is part of the reason this motion is here today. And to mention just Councillor Birch's point, the original motion does say domestic violence and singles out violence against women and girls. It kind of separates it out, so there isn't anti-male, it isn't the exclusion of men, it's as well as. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sue Malinda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I like the beginning of the amendment because it actually says domestic abuse rather than just violence. Because as other councillors said, domestic abuse covers all sorts of patterns of abusive behaviour in either a dating or a family relationship where the abuser exerts power or control over the victim. So that can be mental, physical, economic, which we haven't mentioned, or sexual, and it includes coercive control, where an actual pattern of assault and threats and humiliation and intimidation is used to harm, punish, or frighten the victim, or survivor, as we should say now, by isolating them. I heard on Woman's Hour the other day, it might have been this morning actually, that 60% of women in prison are themselves survivors of domestic abuse. And, you know, that is how women and girls are treated rather than being helped at an earlier stage. However, the second part of this amendment, I would prefer it to be the original statement, which is the annual quantitative audit, as opposed to the scrutiny matrix item. So I'm a bit, I'm not quite sure what to do now, because I prefer the mentioning of abuse, and that it also seems to say it also happens particularly with children, perhaps. So I like that bit, but I'm not so sure about the bit of that it's only going to be that it's not going to be an annual quantitative audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I mainly want to contribute because I don't want my only contribution to be putting my hand up at the wrong time. Right, but,
Well, you're going to this amendment.
I am going
not
to, sorry.
any amendment.
Well, no, I just wanted to just point out the reason that we are in favour of the original annual quantitative audit is because there is some confusion around what the borough does. We do some excellent things, but from memory, and it is only from memory, when we did the excellent J9 training that you referred to, which was brilliant, that was Ruth, wasn't it the MP that led that? Because I sat in the same room as the MP, so it was the MP that led that with the help of the J9 group. It wasn't anything to do with Rushcliffe, I don't think, as a borough. But so if it was, then that wasn't clear. And if it wasn't, then maybe we should be doing more with that. So this is what the annual quantitative audit would do, isn't it? It points out to everybody, well, we're not communicating this clearly to our members. They don't know it's coming from us or it isn't. They're not going on the training that they could. There aren't posters in the toilet. We need to put some up. That what happens with this matrix doesn't really seem to do that. I think the annual quantitative audit annually presented to the group makes more sense, just gives it teeth, makes it actually happen. We're not doing any more than simply requesting that we look at what we currently do, we look at how we're telling people about it, because people don't seem to know these things exist. They think they're being trained and they're not. Like, it just seems madness that we wouldn't do that to me. And I would ask us to put that back in, please.
Councillor Richard Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this one, but I'm talking to and listening to the debate, and I'm very much concerned that we might be sort of losing the sense of what we want to do here. There are good elements in the original motion that Councillor Calp's put forward, and there are good elements to the motion, the amendment that's been put forward as well. Councillor Simon has mentioned some changes to the wording, particularly the first part. I don't normally suggest this, but perhaps this is something that we should agree to take back, reword, and then bring forward at the next council meeting for something that we can all agree on. I wouldn't normally suggest that because I like to get things discussed and put in place and sorted out at full council. I think that's a better way to go. But this is something that's, I think, too important just to be banding back and forth. It's 9:30 already. I don't want us to rush it. I don't want us to lose it. So perhaps it's something that we could agree to take back, look at the wording that works best for everyone, and then bring it to the next council meeting. Just proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm just looking to make sure what we can do. Chief Executive.
Councillor Mallender, are you proposing to adjourn the debate to the next meeting?
Yes. On the grounds that it would give everyone time to reach a suitable form of wording that I think that everyone could get behind and back.
And Councillor Mallender, do you have a seconder?
Okay. There you go. Okay. I think we've got a few seconders. So, who's it?
No, we don't. Sorry, that adjourns this item, which is the debate on this motion.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you can bring it back to the next meeting.
So yes.
So you would vote on adjourning the debate. Would members like a couple of minutes to think about that before voting? Yeah. Okay.
Well done.
Okay, so you're going to ask the leader to say, the leaders have to speak, and then we'll vote on the adjournment.
Okay. Right. Right. Okay then. We are now, I'm going to ask the leader to speak, and then we'll go to a vote on the adjournment issue of whether we adjourn this motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the leaders have to speak. Yeah.
The leaders asked to speak and clarify where we are. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm speaking to the proposal to adjourn this item, and it is such an important item, and it should transcend party politics. You know, it's not something to wave party banners about at all, because, as I say, it's far too important. I think we do need to make sure we get an agreement. And let's not worry about the detail now, but some form of cross-party group to agree on the on a wording that we can all sign up to. But I think what's important as well, Madam Mayor, is that due to the importance that we do make sure that the minutes of the record shows that we are basically all in agreement with the sentiments, but that we're anxious to make sure that we get the wording right and that we can all sign up to that wording. So does that sort of make basically a consensus? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We will now go to vote on what to adjourn. Thank you. I've got amendments coming up to it. We now vote on the adjournment. Okay. So all in favour of adjournment? Does that look about right? Yep. Nobody against? No. Okay. Well then I declare that the motion is carried about the adjournment. I'm sure I think I got that right, but you get the general gist of it anyway. It sounded right to me. Okay, thank you very much. I think that is a good idea, and to talk about it between now and the next meeting. I'm sure that both sides will come up with something that they can all agree on, because really it's only about the wording of it. The actual sentiment of violence against women, children, and is very important, and we need to get it right. Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, okay. We go to item 12 now. Questions from councillors. To answer questions submitted by councillors under Standing Order paragraph 4.33. So I go to Councillor Gowland to put the question to Councillor Upton, please. Sorry, okay.
Hello, as you know, thank you. As you know, the local planning authority may at any time prepare a revision of the LDO. Is the council planning to revisit the Rushcliffe and Soar LDO, given that HS2 will no longer be coming to East Midlands Parkway? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Bearing in mind the time, the short response would be no, but a little bit more. The LDO, in my opinion, was not predicated on the HS2 coming to East Midlands Parkway, as I recall. At that time, when we first discussed it, HS2 was coming to Tottenham. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary question on that subject? Okay. Okay. Councillor Upton, you've replied, so we move to the next question. Councillor Birch to put his question to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Was an offer made by the Rushcliffe Conservative Party in 2019 to take the proposed Butfield car park site from Bingham Town Council by either...
Madam Mayor, that isn't the question that was submitted.
This has happened once before. It wasn't my fault then. I don't think it's my fault now. That's what was circulated by the officers. I'm reading it verbatim from the email.
Beg your pardon, Councillor Birch, that there must have been a mistake in the one circulated. That wasn't the one that was agreed that you submitted. It was about the question about the Conservative-led administration. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sure thing. I'll start again. Was an offer made by the Rushcliffe Conservative Association? I'm sorry, I don't have it. I'm reading what I have in front of me and what I was sent by the officers. May I have a copy, please?
Have you got it there, Helen?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Third time lucky. And again, just Councillor Clark, I can see you're a bit animated there. At Cabinet previously, I did read it as I'd submitted it, and I'd read it. There's no games here. I'd read it exactly as it had been emailed to me. Okay. So that's okay. Yeah, may I continue? Thank you. Was an offer made by the Conservative-led Rushcliffe Borough Council administration in 2019 to take the proposed Butfield car park site from Bingham Town Council by either a land swap or by accepting a land transfer from Bingham Town Council?
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No formal offer was made. Such a proposal would have to be agreed by Cabinet with a full business case and options appraisal, including financial and legal advice. It would clearly also have to be agreed by Bingham Town Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Birch, have you a supplementary question concerning what you have just read out?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And I know that you used the words formal offer, Councillor Clark. The reason I asked this question was because members of the Rushcliffe Conservative Association and Newark Conservative Association, which covers Bingham, regularly claim that you did make such an offer, whether informally or formally.
No, I'm sorry. It's not a question
That's not
about.
a supplementary question, and it's also a statement about political associations, not about the Conservative-led Rushcliffe Borough Council.
I was leading on to my question. May I finish, Madam?
Question. The question says that it's the Rushcliffe Borough Council administration. Nothing in there is about the association. So please keep to the question.
Will this council please write and publish an open letter to the residents of Bingham and the surrounding villages deserves to explain precisely what the Rushcliffe Borough Council Service Administration has done to attempt to fix car parking problems in Bingham from 2011 to present day?
Do you want to say a few words?
Well, that supplementary doesn't relate to the original question, Madam Mayor. So all I'll say is that the car parking strategy group of the Borough Council, the work is in progress and underway, and its conclusions will come clear in due course.
Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Plant.
Oops. All right. Thank you. I was very pleased.
To Councillor Jonathan Wheeler. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Very pleased recently to see this council's corporate parenting commitments to care leavers published in the council's collection, and I hope everybody else got the opportunity to read them as well. So my question is, one of the corporate parenting commitments is, and I quote, working closely with our leisure contractors to offer free access to leisure services for care leavers. And my question is, do we know how many care leavers have taken up this offer?
Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So, yeah, I'm really glad that that's something we do. Obviously, we discussed that in the care motion that we had at the previous council meeting. And to date, 20 identified care leavers have benefited from the scheme we've got in place in our leisure centres. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary question pertaining to that question?
No. But it's a supplementary that is to do with the corporate and parenting commitments. So it is all sort of one. And I can be very quick. Very quick. Another commitment listed is a policy to reduce the council tax to those persons liable to pay council tax within the borough who are defined as care leavers. That also was in inverted commas, but so it wasn't very clear. But so hence the question. But my understanding is that care leavers living in Rushcliffe are exempt from council tax payment up to the age of 25. Is that not correct?
Do we know?
Thank you for the supplementary. So we have a council tax reduction scheme in place for our care leavers. And to state the figures I have, that we have given that discount to 46 people, which totals over £100,000. In terms of the exact exemption, I have to get the exact details, make sure I get the right wording to you, just to clarify. But so that is the discount we've given to our care leavers so far. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Chewings, would you like to put your question to Councillor Clark, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of the ongoing consultation by Nottinghamshire County Council regarding the tram concession pass scheme, scheduled from the 10th of November 2023 to the 7th of January 2024, there is significant concern amongst our residents about the potential removal of the concessionary travel benefits for the elderly and disabled. Given the importance of this issue and its impact on our community, can you confirm that Rushcliffe Borough Council will make a formal submission to the consultation emphasising the critical need of these travel benefits for our elderly and disabled residents and the broad implications of any changes on their well-being and access to essential services?
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, the Borough Council won't be submitting a corporate response to the consultation. The whole point of the County Council consultation is that it is to allow individual responses to the consultation, and I'd just like to emphasise that's individual responses by anyone. So it isn't limited to those who are in receipt of a tram concession. It is open to anyone to respond, and the County Council wants individual responses rather than corporate responses. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Just one moment. Just need to clarify something.
Yeah, she can raise a point of order.
Yeah. Right. Councillor Thomas, you did raise your hand to put a point of order. I'm sorry, but I was just clarifying whether it was possible.
I'm just wondering, Madam Mayor, if Councillor Clark perhaps has a conflict of interest in terms of answering that question on the basis that he is portfolio holder in Nottinghamshire County Council on that topic. Thank you.
Did you hear that?
Well, spoken Councillor Clark to declare if he thinks he has. Okay. Do you want to ask about if this is supplementary?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Chewings?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So, my supplementary question is, considering the significant implications that this may impose on our community, will you join me in urging Nottinghamshire County Council to extend the consultation deadline to the end of January 2024 and to proactively engage with the concessionary pass holders by directly informing them about the consultation in writing and how they may engage with it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I would just repeat what I said, that the consultation is for individuals to respond to, and it is open to anyone. It is not limited to concessionary holders. Therefore, to write a letter to concessionary holders would actually be discriminating against those who do not hold a concession, because it is open to anybody to respond. And it is up to the county council to decide whether to extend the consultation period. It's not up to Rushcliffe Borough Council to decide. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, we've concluded. I'll just stand up for a few minutes. Oh, my knees. Right. That concludes the business for this evening. But before you rush off, could I just do a quick promotion for a Chinese dinner that is being organised for the 29th of February. It is a leap year. At Young Things in Bingham. Councillor Regan over there has offered to hold it, and on behalf of my charity. So I would like you all, if you could, to have a think about that and reserve the 29th of February. We now have some festive refreshments prepared by a lady called Pat, who provides refreshments for events in aid of fundraising for cancer patients. So all the cooking has been done, and the mince pies, dare I say, have been all done by Pat, and for fundraising for cancer patients. So good night and Merry Christmas, and I'll see you